Hey there, so in this video we're going to look at multiplying using special product formulas. All of these problems can be done using FOIL or the grid method that people sometimes know for multiplying polynomials. The idea is to get comfortable with these formulas though, because when we get to the factoring chapter in a couple of weeks, these are much easier, and by factoring what we'll have is we'll have this side of the formula and we're trying to get back to this one. These are really easy problems if you know these formulas, and then they're really hard problems if you don't know the formulas. So even if you're like, I think I could just FOIL this and that seems better, I would encourage you to try to kind of wrap your head around this little bit that I'm going to show you, because it's really going to help you out in a couple of weeks' time. And factoring is much harder than multiplying, so kind of any help is kind of worth the effort. I am going to show these at least once here using FOIL to explain why these formulas work. Basically the three formulas we have are where we have a plus b twice, so a plus b, we're just writing that quantity squared, and that would be like this one. The same thing but with a minus, so if we had y minus 6 twice, that would be this formula. And then this is where we have mixed signs, a plus b and a minus b, so that's kind of these first two examples here. So if I just FOILed this out, let me show you what would happen. We would go x times x, and we would get an x squared. We'd go x times negative 2, we get a minus 2x in the middle, and then the next one would be a plus 2x, and then 2 times negative 2 would make minus 4. And you can see what's going to happen every time these are the same. We're going to get a minus the thing and a plus the thing, and they're going to cancel each other out, and we're just going to be left with the things on the ends, x squared minus 4. So an easier way to do this is if you know it's going to be a squared minus b squared, you just look at x and go x squared, and then minus 2 squared makes the 4. So we're just saying this thing squared minus whatever's on the end squared. And so with this, I would think of this as, and I wouldn't write this step, but let me just write it out this time. A squared would be like 5x quantity squared minus b squared, which would be 2 squared. I would just say 5x times 5x, 25x squared, 2 times 2 minus 4, and you're done with it. Again, it may seem easier to FOIL, but the goal is when you see this thing in, I think, 2 or 3 more chapters, I think it's 3 more chapters, that you're going to look at this and go, oh, that's going to be 5x plus 2 and 5x minus 2, and it will hopefully be just that easy for you if you're comfortable going this direction. And again, the factoring is going to be a fair bit harder. So using these next couple properties or formulas, again, let me write this out side by side. Y plus 6 times y plus 6, and this is just to kind of show why it does what it does. Y times y would be y squared. Y times 6 gets me a plus 6y. 6 times y gets me another plus 6y. And 6 times 6 gets me 36. Collecting those, I would have y squared plus 6 and 6 would give us 12y there in the middle, plus 36. And then let me write out that formula just so we can see it at the same time. This is supposed to come out to a squared plus 2ab plus b squared when I multiply a plus b times another a plus b, or you can think of it as a plus b squared, like we had up above. So that would mean this would be a squared is the first thing, so y times y would be a squared. We're supposed to go 2 times a times b, so 2 times y times 6 is what that is, because the a is the y and the b is the 6. So I just look at whatever's here, and I multiply these two things together and I double it. So that would be 6y, and then doubled, there's our 12y, and that's going to double because we always get 2 factors of that. And then 6 times 6 would be the 36 on the end. It's a little easier to follow maybe on this next one just because there's coefficients that aren't 1. So if I think of the formula, again, let me write that out right here, a squared, and this is another plus, so that means it's a plus 2ab. If it's a minus, this is a minus, everything else is the same. 5x times 5x would be a squared, so that would be 25x squared. 2 times a times b, so that's your a, that's your b, just multiply them together. So 5x times 4 would be 20x, and then double it for the 2, and that makes 40x. And then b squared, 4 is b, so b squared would be 4 times 4, or 16. And that's it. So you don't really have to go through all those steps, just 5 squared times, or 5x times 5x, 25x squared, multiply them together, 20, double it makes 40, 4 times 4, 16, you have it. And again, even if that doesn't seem great in this section, when you see this mess, and when you see what you have to do, which is basically going to be 25 times 16 would be 400, I think, if I did that right in my head. 4 times that, times, yeah. So you'd have to ask yourself what multiplies to 400 and adds to be 40, and then figure out it's 25 times 16 if you ignore this section. And if you don't, you get to just look at this and go, oh, it's going to factor to 5x plus 4, quantity squared, and I'm done. This is such a hard factoring problem if you don't know these formulas. So that's really the reason to start getting comfortable with them now, to make that chapter that's in our future a lot easier. These last two, same thing. So this time I'll just use the formula again. So we go 3x times 3x, that's 9x squared. 3 times 4 would be 12, and then double that and you get 24, and this time it'll be a minus because of that minus sign. 24x, and then 4 times 4 would be a plus 16 on the end. That's it. This one, if the signs freak you out, you can totally write it side by side and do the FOIL, but let's try to do it without. So negative 4x times negative 4x, that's going to flip that sign to a positive. Should I write it out? I'm going to write it out and show you that, and then show you why it does what it does. Because that middle sign is a little bit hard to see. So just to motivate what I'm going to do in a second. So there's our double negative on the front, and that's going to be 16x squared. Notice when I do these, the outside, it's a double negative, so it's going to make it a positive, and we'll see that in a second doing it the other way as well. Another double negative, so that's going to give us a positive right there. And then another double negative, which is going to give us a positive right there. So we're going to end up, give myself a little more room, 16x squared plus 16x plus 4. So if I think of it as using the formula, that's basically these, the sign in this case is a little funky because it's all negatives. But if you think of this as your A and this is your B, negative 4x times negative 4x does make positive 16x squared. If I multiply these two together, negative and negative is going to make that a positive 8x, and then double it, and that's why that is a positive 16 right there. But you can see it worked out when I FOILed as well. And then negative 2 times negative 2, there's the positive 4 on the end. And again, that one might be a little uncomfortable because of that extra minus sign. And if you do get messed up, you can always write them side by side and do out the steps. But for these more straightforward ones, again, when we get to the factoring, it's going to be so nice if you can look at that and go, oh, that's that kind that's just going to, oops, not minus. It's just going to break down right back to there because 9x squared breaks down to 3x and 16 breaks down to 4. If you didn't know that, you would have to do 9 times 16 is what multiplies to 144 and adds to negative 24, which is actually really hard to figure out. So totally worth working with these formulas and just kind of giving yourself a jump start on, I think it will be chapter 7 where we're going to see the factoring.